Now let's talk about the Sony Zee saga. Two heavyweights in the entertainment business, they wanted to join forces, but after 2 years of negotiations, the proposed merger collapsed. And now it has become a cautionary tale of everything that's wrong with India's corporate governance. This entire saga is doing a lot of damage to brand India. When it was first proposed, the idea seemed promising, at least on paper. Two industry leaders coming together to run a $10 billion entity, a bigger ship in theory. But it sunk before it could sail, leaving a bitter taste in everyone's mouth. A legal battle is now on the horizon. Zee is taking Sony to court in both India and Singapore. It is seeking to implement the merger terms. Zee's case rests on two arguments. First, there was no breach of terms, that's what they say. Zee says it is engaged with Sony, or it engaged with Sony in good faith. And the second argument is that Sony does not deserve a termination fee. They've asked for it, the Japanese giant Sony. They've asked for some $90 million in compensation. Compensation for the failed merger, that's what Sony wants. What about Zee? What does it want from the lawsuit? It wants a merger with Sony. Zee wants to enforce it through courts. Their filing says, and I'm quoting, Zee calls upon Sony to immediately withdraw the termination and confirm that they will perform their obligations to give effect to and implement the merger scheme. So the courts could decide the fate of this merger. Zee wants it, Sony does not want it. Reports say Sony's chief in India has in fact written to his employees. The letter talks about exploring new opportunities, meaning Sony remains dedicated to India, but it doesn't want to do business with Zee. So will there be a forced marriage? That's for the courts to decide. Meanwhile, Zee's troubles are growing. The company is on the radar of the ED, that's the Enforcement Directorate. It's a government agency tasked with fighting economic crime. Yesterday, ED officials showed up at Zee's Mumbai offices. They searched the premises, they questioned the employees, some of them. So what were they looking for? It's not clear as of now, but here's what we know. Zee's founders are being investigated by SEBI, the Securities Exchange Board of India, SEBI. SEBI is India's market regulator. It is probing allegations of fund diversion by Zee founder Subhash Chandra and his son Puneet Goenka, who's also the CEO and managing director of Zee. They're said to have stolen from the company anywhere between 800 to 1,000 crore rupees. That's 90 to 120 million US dollars diverted from the company. This probe has come as a big setback for Zee. It's also one of the reasons why the Sony merger failed. Sony felt uneasy about the investigation and the scrutiny against the founders. When the deal was first signed, Goenka was poised to lead the merged entity, but then this investigation began. SEBI banned Goenka and Chandra from holding any managerial positions. That ban was later lifted, but Sony remained uncomfortable. Also, the regulator did not take the heat off the founders. So this month, Subhash Chandra appealed to the government. He sought their intervention. Reports say he wrote to Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister of India, and in this letter, he's accused SEBI of scuttling the merger. He said the regulator, and I'm quoting, the regulator was acting with a predetermined mind, and that the minister should intervene to protect the minority shareholders. So he's basically trying to put SEBI in the dock. It did not work. Sony walked out and Zee shares tanked. News of the merger collapse led to a mass sell-off. Shares of Zee Entertainment fell by more than 30%, and now institutional investors want answers. What are institutional investors? These are large organizations. Usually they manage large pools of cash. They invest on behalf of their clients. Now, reports say they're holding discussions. They're discussing the way forward. And one of the options they're considering is this: an extraordinary general meeting where Puneet Goenka's fate could be decided. Basically, they're hinting at a forced removal. And the founders of Zee are under pressure. They need to devise the way forward. And they must do it fast, else they will face the wrath of the shareholders.